Welcome back to the Nursing Ministry channel. My name is Ludia Osita, a registered nurse, and I created this platform to discuss nursing as a ministry and as a profession. For our returning viewers, thank you once again, and for the new viewers, you are welcome. I'd advise you, the new viewer, to watch our previous episodes if at all you feel lost in this episode, because this episode is a build-up from our previous episode. Once again, you are welcome. Now, in today's topic, I'm going to discuss a book in the Bible of a man called Nehemiah. Nehemiah was in exile in a city where he was the cupbearer, meaning he gave the king wine. He served the king wine. And at one point, a man called Hanani came visiting, and Nehemiah asked him, "How is Jerusalem? How are the people there?" But Hanani responded and told him, "Things are not well in Jerusalem. The city walls have been broken down. The gates have been burned by fire. The people are in disgrace and they're troubled." This moved Nehemiah so much that he wept and went into fasting and mourning, praying to God and asking God for mercy, because he confessed his own sins, those of his family, and told God that truly it is them who had sinned against God, and that he was asking for mercy and reminding God also that he had said that when they disobeyed the commands and the decrees of Moses, then God would scatter them to all the other nations. But if they returned to God in obeying these commands, that God had promised to resettle them back into their own city. So he was telling God to remember that promise, but also to give him favor because he was going to approach the king. So when he went on to serve the king wine, his face was saddened. And Nehemiah had never been sad before the king before. So the king asked him, "Why are you sad? And yet you're not ill. This can be nothing but the sadness of the heart." So as much as Nehemiah was afraid, he spoke up and he told the king, "Why shouldn't I be saddened? Yet the city where my ancestors are buried is in shambles. The walls have been broken down. The gates have been burned by fire." So the king asked him, "What do you want?" And Nehemiah, so that he had received favor from the king, asked the king if he could allow him, give him permission to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the wall of the city. So the king asked him, how long would the journey take? And now Nehemiah set up a time and told the king the time. He set a time and the king gave him permission. But he went on further and asked the king if he could get a letter that he would present to the governors of the Trans-Euphrates. These were cities between where they were and Jerusalem. There were governors that were stationed along the way. So the king gave him the letter. He also asked for a letter to take to Asaph, who was the keeper of the royal park where timber was obtained. And so the king gave him the letter to get the timber from Asaph, and this timber he would use to rebuild the walls, build the gate of the city, and also build a place where he was going to stay. Because remember, during the exile, things were broken down. They were destroyed. So he did have a home where he was going to stay, and the timber would help in building the same. Above and beyond, the king went further and gave him an army that would protect him until he got safely in Jerusalem. So Nehemiah went to Jerusalem. But I believe because the journey was long, it took him 3 days probably resting. And after the third day, one night, having told no one the reason why he came, because you can imagine seeing a cavalry of armies coming in, and Nehemiah has come, and people would probably ask what is going on. But he didn't mention anything to anyone why he was there, that the Lord had even put it in his heart to rebuild the walls of the city. So on this third day at night, he went around the city surveying the extent of the damage. Then he sat down the nobles, the officials, and other Jews and told them, "We're in disgrace. Look at the situation we are in. Come, let's rebuild this city wall." And to give them confidence, so that they would not think that they are rebelling against the king, he told them what the Lord had done for him back when he was in exile, and how the letter that the king had even given him. So it built confidence in the people, knowing that when they start building, they would not be rebelling against the king. So they went to work to build the wall. But when a certain man called Sanballat, he was a Horonite, and Tobiah, he was an Ammonite. When these two men heard that there's somebody who had come to improve the welfare of the Jews, they were so incensed. They were angry because they enjoyed seeing the Jews in that state. To them, they wanted the Jews to remain in that state. They were angry and they approached Nehemiah and asked him, "What do you people think you're doing? Are you rebelling against the king?" But Nehemiah answered and said, "The Lord will give us success. But as for you two, you won't have any historic claim to what we are doing, to this city." Then as they kept on building, these men got further troubled. Now, the rebuilding of the wall was not done haphazardly. It was done in order. And that's the point I wanted us to understand as we engage in our topic today concerning anatomy and physiology. The wall was built in portions, and these portions was built by groups of people, more likely families. So for instance, a man, his wife, and his children would build the portion of the wall from one point to the next. Then the next family would take it off from there to another point, and on and on and on until the entire circumference of the city wall was covered. Now, as they rebuilt, these men, Sanballat and Tobiah, and also Geshem the Arab, they got more angry. They would mock them. They would ridicule the Jews. What do they think they're doing? Do they think they'll rebuild this wall in one day? Even if they rebuild, will they set up their altars? Will they raise their altars? They kept mocking them and ridiculing them. But Nehemiah and the men, because they were building with one heart, the wall went up very fast. At some point when it got halfway, and these enemies of the rebuilders felt their mockery and their ridicule was doing no good, they resorted to harming them. They thought, let's kill them. Once they're dead, the work stops. But that word got to Nehemiah and the Jews. Now Nehemiah, because he was the overall, he divided the rebuilders into groups, the men. And half the men rebuilt the wall, they worked on the wall, and the other half stationed themselves with weapons, whether spears, swords, shields, bows, to protect the builders. The men that were carrying the materials, they worked with one hand carrying a weapon and the other hand carried the materials. So they worked with a weapon and the materials on the other hand. And that's how they took up the wall in 52 days, having completed it. When they completed this wall, ladies and gentlemen, these very men that were ridiculing them and threatening to kill them, lost their confidence because they knew there's no way this wall could have been built by human strength. God must have helped them. There's a point in time I didn't quite understand this rebuilding of the wall because I thought, well, there were probably many men, they were organized, it's possible to rebuild, until I got to understand this was not the wall of an estate. It was the wall of a city. So wherever you are, imagine the city where you are living in, and imagine that it has a perimeter wall all around it. It can't take 52 days to build that wall. And in those days, the stones were not as small blocks as we have today. The stones were much bigger, and that is what they were using to rebuild the walls. So truly, it was a supernatural occurrence at that time. Now, having touched on what our topic is today, it is anatomy and physiology. And anatomy and physiology is among the first courses that a nursing student should expect to be taught once they have joined nursing school. Remember our candidate who had qualified, they have joined the nursing school, they have complied with the rules and regulations that they'd have to adhere to. They have come with the supplies that they have been asked to bring with them. Now, here they are in their first class. More than likely, anatomy and physiology will be among the first courses that they will be taught. Because It is a subject that teaches the structure of the human body and the functions of these structures. So, for instance, the eye. The student has to understand what parts make up the eye and what are the functions of these various parts. Now, I did not mention that the student should come with stationery to the nursing school, and I left that out on purpose. Reasons being, I wanted to bring out the fact that a drawing pad, whether drawing book or drawing papers, and coloring pencils would be among the key requirements that this nursing student would have to come with. But this depends on the nursing school. Some other institutions don't require the student to come with this. Instead, they use the digital platforms, maybe the computers, to be able to learn anatomy and physiology. But based on my experience, the drawing paper and the coloring pencils were what we really used to help us understand anatomy and physiology better. So the student would have to probably draw the structure. If, for instance, it was the eye, draw the different parts, then use the coloring pencils. Yellow, shade green, shade black, the different parts. Then draw an arrow on each and every one of the parts and name these parts accurately. It had to be accurate, otherwise that point would be lost. Now, during an examination, the student may get a question such as, using a drawing, illustrate the different parts of an eye. Using a drawing, illustrate the different parts of an eye. And this particular question would have 5 marks, for instance. And the student has just about 3 minutes to answer that question. Why 3 minutes? Because there are other questions that they have to complete. Remember, the exam probably is 4 hours long. So if they spend too much time trying to figure out the eye, trying to remember the different parts, time is going and they're losing valuable time that they could be using on other questions. So they don't want to run out of that valuable time. And that is why, by having the drawing material, the drawing pad, and the coloring pencils, they get to practice throughout their 3.5, 4 years of nursing school. So every time they draw, for instance, in their own private study, they would decide, today I'm just going to practice on drawing maybe three structures. So open up and look at maybe the structure of the skin. Practice, cover, do it without looking, coloring those different parts, naming the parts accurately. If they mark themselves out, then if they see there's a part that they got wrong, repeat again until they get it. So if they do this, tomorrow they do some 3 others, the next day 3, then and some other day they may feel, I don't feel like studying, let me just spend time practicing drawing. So you may find a student taking the whole Saturday just doing drawings, maybe in the library at a corner with music in the ears, and just drawing one part, shading it with colors, and marking themselves, putting it aside, drawing a different one, buying more stationery, and by the time they're doing their quizzes, their tests, and their exams, it's already in them. Believe you me, it does not end with the exams. Years and decades later, it will be so much easier to visualize these parts. Even while just discussing, like I'm discussing with you, it is very easy to visualize these parts because of the drawing, the frequent drawing and coloring and naming the parts. So I'm able to name the parts offhand because of the practice or the previous practices. So this is one of the things that the students should expect while joining nursing school and even in the anatomy and physiology class. Let me discuss a little bit what this anatomy and physiology is all about. Now that I've brought up this Bible story, you may ask, what is the relationship between Nehemiah and rebuilding the wall and these men who are securing the builders and Sanballat and Tobiah, and Geshem, the Arab. I want you to understand one thing. On this hand, we have Nehemiah, who is the let me call him supervisor of the entire project of rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. And on this hand, we have this human body, and we have a similar organ in the body that I would term as the overall, and this is our brain. The brain is the one that coordinates the different parts of the body, communicates sends communication around the body, telling the arm to move, telling the head to tilt, or flexing of the arm. Nehemiah is playing a role similar to what is in the body. The groups of men and women who are rebuilding the wall can be likened to the different parts of our body, which they work synergistically to help the body function as one unit, as a whole. So you may have the brain working, the heart doing something else, the stomach doing another. But when we come to organ system, some of these parts have to work together. And at the end of the day, we have a full, normal human being, stable physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. So I wanted you to understand this rebuilding of the wall in portions so that you will understand what I'm discussing in anatomy and physiology. Now, Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem are troublemakers. We don't want that in the body. So I just call them the diseases and the attacks on the body that we normally get, which can really halt the normal functioning of the entire human body. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a snippet of what anatomy and physiology is. You as a nursing student, what do you expect in this course? When the anatomy and physiology class discusses the human body from the basic unit, which is the cell. The good thing about the prerequisites, we had biology, and there was a cell discussed in biology. So coming to anatomy and physiology, once the students get to hear about the cell, they already know what it is all about. But in anatomy and physiology, there's also an explanation that it is the basic unit of life, meaning it can survive on its own. It has an entrance to it through the membrane, what covers it. It has what generates energy. It has the whatever breaks down the nutrients that it receives, even the waste that it produces and how it exits it from its own, environment. So the cell is the basic unit of life. In our bodies, that is the most basic. Then, when two or more cells come together, we have what we call the tissues. Now, the tissues, for instance, when one cell comes together with another similar cell or more similar cells and forms a tissue, they are working to perform a specific function. It has to be specific. Now, our entire human body has 4 different types of tissues, meaning if I'm to search your entire body as a human being, there are 4 key types of tissues. I'll simply name them. I had a bit of a hard time trying to put together this presentation because I don't want this to be another anatomy and physiology class. Because I'm talking to you who is a nurse by default. Remember, nursing is a ministry. And I want you to use this information to be able to serve somebody. And because you've not gone through the prerequisites, you've not gone through all these intricate courses to get to where nursing is, it will be very unfair for me to start throwing out these difficult terms and make this episode, useless. It won't be of any help. So I'll try to make this presentation as simple as possible for your better understanding. So a tissue is when two or more similar cells come together to perform a function, and in the entire body there are 4 different types. So we have them: the muscle tissue, the nervous tissue, the connective tissue, and epithelial tissue. Now, these are found in the body, but I won't go deep into what they're all about. Just understand that the whole body has 4 types of tissues. Now, when 2 or more tissues come together to perform a specific function, we call that an organ. By this I mean, these 4 tissues that I have mentioned, when 2 or 3 or 4 of them come together to do something in the body, that is no longer referred to a tissue, but now it has become an organ. So let me take you to the stomach. The stomach has a minimum of about 3 of these tissues. The tissues that lie inside the stomach, it is somehow shaped like a ball that is deflated. So that would be the stomach. So imagine the inside part and maybe the outside part. That is the epithelial tissue, because these are the cells that have lined it. Then the wall of the stomach has that muscle tissue. And what innervates this muscle is the nervous tissue. So remember, the body has 4 types. And the stomach, already we have mentioned these 3: epithelial tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. And that's why it is referred to as an organ. So the function of this, all these 3 tissues coming together, is to churn whatever food you've brought into the stomach. It mixes it up because the nerves send electrical impulses around the muscle of the stomach, and it causes the muscles to contract and relax. And this movement is what causes now the food to be mixed with the acid. The epithelial cells itself have released the acid. So all these their main aim is to mix the food in the stomach and then release it into the intestine. So I wanted to bring out that point of what really an organ does. A group of tissues performing some function or a particular function. Now, other than the organ, finally, we have the organ system. And as you may have guessed correctly, an organ system is when 2 or more organs come together to perform a complex function. A complex function. So for instance, now, because we've started with the stomach is in an organ system, and it involves the intestines. It involves the tube, which you call the esophagus, to the stomach. From the stomach, it involves the liver. It involves another organ called the pancreas. It involves the intestines. So all this is what we refer to an organ system, because these are different organs positioned along the line to perform a complex function. Why complex and not simple? Because there is the chewing involved, there's the mixing of the saliva there is the mixing of the acid and the churning of the stomach, there's the absorption into the bloodstream. That is why it is a complex function. So if you have paid attention, I have mentioned 4 parts of this anatomy and physiology. I've talked about the cell, I've talked about the tissues and the 4 different types of tissues in the body. I've spoken about the organs, and finally, the organ system. That is what is involved in anatomy and physiology. Now, I'd like to mention the organ systems, having given you a clear view of what you're talking about. In the whole human body, in anatomy and physiology, and by this you'll understand the importance of this drawing that you're talking about. Not to scare the students or anyone thinking about joining nursing, you may get here and think, there's no way I'm doing this. Maybe you've even heard of other students who have to operate a cadaver. A cadaver is a dead body that has been donated for, dissecting and learning these parts. I didn't have to do the cadaver. The drawing book and the coloring pencils did it for us. And we learned anatomy and physiology. So if you are there thinking, I don't think I can master all these terms, because you will get so many terms, please watch the previous episode. where I encouraged you, go in that might. Go ahead and enroll in nursing. Do your part of the studying. Depending on God, watch that video to help you understand. And you'll be shocked how you'll graduate in nursing, how you'll remember, how you'll understand and remember all these terms, because there are very many. With your own brain, you cannot remember all these terms. It is almost impossible, depending on your own human strength, to remember the terms, to remember even how to draw them, to color them. It takes a lot. Remember, it's not the only course you're learning. There's another course awaiting. There's a quiz here and there. So refer to my previous episode and the story of how I got through the nursing school to encourage you, so that as I'm discussing this, you're not already backing out and thinking, I can't do this, let me look at another career. If nursing truly is in you, then go for it. Watch the video, understand how we go through. Maybe you can pick up a thing or two, get the scriptures that will walk you through it, and go ahead and graduate and become a nurse, the nurse that you already are. But if, of course, we all need other professions. If nursing isn't for you, there's still a nurse in you. You need to understand all these parts of the body, because you have a loved one sick at home. Should they maybe have a cardiac arrest? The worst thing you want to be doing is probably, if you're doing CPR, you're trying to resuscitate them. Can you imagine pressing on their thigh to try and bring them back to life? And yet the heart is located on the left part of the chest. So it is just good to be able to understand this anatomy and physiology, even if the basic parts of the structure of the body. It helps in nursing your loved one. It helps in understanding what this person is facing, so that when you, as the registered nurse that you are by default, you accompany your loved one to the hospital, and the doctor gives an order or gives a diagnosis and tells you that this is what is going on with their kidney. You're not thinking that the kidney is located on the shoulder. You're not thinking that the kidney is located in somewhere in the armpit. You will understand that the kidney is somewhere between the back, your back, and on the side of the body. So already it gives you an understanding of what you're dealing with. That is why in this last part, the organ system, I want to give you a rough overview so that the information can help you. And when you're nursing your loved one, you're able to give them the best of care, to support them maximally, and also to use the nurse in you as a ministry to care for your family members and even as a community. So in organ systems, the whole body has about 11 organ systems. So as I name them, I simply point out what it all refers to. So the first organ system is the nervous system. And this is now the coordinator of the whole body. It has the brain, it has the spinal cord, and the nerves around the body. That is what is the nervous system. This is now our Nehemiah, the one that coordinates things around the body. Once you have the brain dying as one of the vital organs, then death is imminent, because we've never heard of a brain transplant or a machine doing the work of a brain. So the nervous system is the chief organ system in the entire body. Then we have the respiratory system. Respiratory system, it involves the nose, the tube, we call it trachea. Trachea, we have the bronchi. There's a tube that branches out like a tree into the lungs. The lungs, and the main function is for gas exchange, to bring in oxygen into your body and remove carbon dioxide out of the body. Then the third organ system, we have the circulatory system. Sometimes you'll hear it being called cardiovascular system. And this is the heart and the blood vessels, the tubes or the blood vessels that sends blood all over the body to those cells. Remember, our basic unit of life is a cell. So there's a branch that takes the heart pumps the blood, and it pumps it into these blood vessels that takes the clean blood with the nutrients, with the oxygen, with the good things, all through the body until it reaches the cells, the basic unit of life. Then from there, it collects the waste, the bad things that the cells have produced, and it brings it back to the heart to be pumped to the various organs that cleanse, maybe to the kidney for removal as urine, to the lungs, the gases are removed as carbon dioxide, and on, to the liver for detoxification and all. So the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system. Then the fourth organ system is the digestive system. Digestive system, I've already touched on it. It goes from the mouth, the tube, esophagus, it goes into the stomach and the intestines, all the way out of the body. So that is what is called the digestive system. However, it has accessory organs that play different roles. They're in this system and the other. So the liver is part of the digestive system, and the pancreas is also part of the digestive system. So we have the tube, and then these organs that bring in enzymes and other the bile and all that, just to ensure that the food that you eat makes it to the bloodstream, to the cells, and the waste that came with the food is exited out of the body. Our fifth organ system is what we call the endocrine system. The endocrine system is made up of glands. By glands, I mean if you've eaten liver, imagine a piece of liver, a soft, small piece. And these different pieces located in strategic points of the body. Some in the brain, some in front of the throat. There are other glands on top of each kidney. There's another one in the pancreas. That is why I'll say the pancreas, much as it's in the digestive system, it is also in the endocrine system because it produces some hormones like insulin. So anyway, back to the endocrine system, these glands. Now, the interesting thing about this system, one gland may produce what you call the hormones, but these hormones flow through the blood to another gland, and it triggers that gland to release the hormones inside it to do something to the body. So it is these hormones that are responsible for us being happy, for us being depressed, for us some of the hormones even causing the blood pressure to go high, for us to retain fluid in the body. So different hormones, the calcium in our body, when it goes low, the hormones are released to cause the calcium in the blood to be increased. When the calcium is too high, the hormones are released again to cause the kidneys to remove some of this calcium. So just a snippet of what the endocrine system does. Our sixth organ system is the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is almost similar, but not the same to the circulatory system. There are various points where we have nodules, like not swelling, different small portions located again in strategic points of our body. There are some in the armpit, some in the groin area, and then it has branches that more or less run parallel to the circulatory system. Now, this lymphatic system is responsible for the fluid balance in the body. By this I mean, if you've seen people who are so swollen, they're not fat. They are swollen. Their body is swollen. That sometimes when you press on their skin, there's a depression. That means there is fluid. And this fluid is not in the blood system, the veins, the arteries. The fluid is outside. And it's not supposed to be in the tissue. There has to be a balance. That is why we look normal. That is why our face is not swollen. So anytime you're seeing that your body is swollen, there could be a likelihood that your lymphatic system is not doing its job. And that is to ensure that the fluid is not too much in the tissue. It drains any extra fluid into the system and empties it into the right receptacle. So it has to keep a balance. And when it is less on this side, it ensures that enough is sent on the tissue side. So that is the lymphatic system. Our sixth organ system is the urinary system. The urinary system is made up of our two kidneys, the ureters, which are tubes from the kidneys, and they join together into a ball-like structure called the bladder. And the bladder empties through a tube called the urethra out of the body as urine. So it is the job of the kidney to extract the waste from the blood. This circulatory system we've discussed, it goes all over our body. Remember, it goes to the cell, the basic unit of life. So if it has gone and entered the kidney, when the kidney receives the blood, it, like the sieve that we use in the kitchen to sieve tea leaves, and we get the tea or anything we sieve to get the liquid. That is what the kidney does. So when the blood comes in, it's able to extract if there is waste from the blood, anything excess in the body, it extracts it and then sends it, forms it as urine in the kidney. It extracts it as urine, and this urine flows through these tubes and it is collected in the bladder. The bladder is located on your lower abdomen, beneath your umbilical cord. So sometimes you can even see the bladder externally when it is full. So when somebody lies flat and the bladder is bulging, of which it should not get to that point, it is not a good thing. Without intervention, there can be rupture. But it has that capacity to extend and extend and extend. That is why you can hold your urine much longer, because the bladder keeps accommodating until the brain, our coordinator, signals the bladder at some point to empty that urine. So in emptying, the bladder simply contracts and sends the urine out into the washroom or toilet. So that is our urinary system, our sixth organ system. Then the seventh organ system is our reproductive system. Now, for the males, their reproductive system has a part that plays out in the urinary system. But for the female, the reproductive system is separate from the urinary system. So for the males, it involves the external part, the penis. It has the testicles. It has the prostate and all these organs inside. And it is used for reproduction. But the urethra, much as it's used for, I'm using the heavy terms, which is a bit difficult. But we'll try help you understand. The urethra is the tube that allows for the passage of urine, also allows for the passage of the semen for reproduction. While for the female, we have the ovaries, we have the tube where the eggs pass the ova into, called fallopian tubes, into the house where the baby is housed, that is the womb, called the uterus, and the cervix. So this is the reproductive system for the female and the male. Our seventh or eighth organ system is the, we have the musculoskeletal system. Musculoskeletal system are two words joined together, muscle and skeleton. Muscle, we do understand our muscles. Skeleton are our bones. So they're normally just combined as one system because they function very closely. The bone has the muscle attached to it. So when the muscle contracts, it squeezes itself. It causes the arm to flex. When the muscle relaxes, to stretch. So there is that contracting and relaxing, which controls movement of the body, also the posture of the body. Without the skeleton, the bones, I wouldn't be sitting as I'm sitting. I'd probably be flopped up. Or in cases like some disabilities where there's a problem with the muscle, you see that there is no strength in the muscle, so the body part is wobbly, it is limp, because the muscles and the bones are not, the bones may be there, but if the muscles are limp, there's nothing to tell to cause the bones to stretch or to contract. So we call that the musculoskeletal system. Something about the musculoskeletal system, the bones of the body, from the crown to the sole of the foot, they have names. They have names. For instance, this bone in the head called the cranium, it is not one whole bone. There are pieces of bone. Now, in a baby who is born, during birth, these bones can overlap. But once they are born, some of these bones fuse together. That is why as an adult, at some point after birth, those bones become fused together. So the baby may be born with more bones, maybe around 260 or 70 thereabout. But when you count the bones in an adult, they are less because these bones fused together. So you may find this flap of bone has a name. This one has a name. The one at the back has a name. So we have temporal bone, we have occipital bone, we have frontal bone, parietal bones, and the names have to be known. Left parietal bone and right parietal bone. Frontal bone, occipital bone. Then the fingers, there is a bone in this finger. There is a bone here, there is another bone here, there is another bone, there are bones on the hand. So the student has to learn these bones, know their names. One good thing, once the names are known, that is it. It's much easier to flow through the nursing education. For instance, a question comes, there's a patient with a fracture of the left humerus. The humerus is this bone in the arm. That is the humerus. So when you hear a fracture of the left humerus, immediately, having learned anatomy and physiology, having studied, done drawings and colorings and naming, the student's mind immediately goes to this bone. So how do you manage this patient? They will not be writing down notes managing the right side, because the patient that they have envisioned is the left humerus is this side that has fractured. So they won't be writing notes and saying, I will assist the patient to a lying position on their left side. And yet it is the left humerus. But one who does not understand the humerus and think that the humerus is the bone of the thigh may answer differently. So that is where the knowledge of these parts and the names of these structures and their functions come in. We move forward on the organ systems. Other than the musculoskeletal system, we have the integumentary system. I believe this is our last system. Now, the integumentary system is the hair, the nails, the skin. That is what the external part of the body. That is what the integumentary system is all about. And it simply protects us from it protects the internal environment from the external environment. So in this system, we will learn about maybe the hair on our body, how, for instance, when temperatures drop and the body wants to conserve heat, there's contraction of the skin, and then the hair of the body stands just to conserve the heat within the body. Or when there's heat inside the body, there is a relaxation and the pores of the skin open to release sweat, to release heat, in order to maintain a balance inside the body of the temperature. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I haven't left out any organ system. If I have, I will bring it up later on. But I wanted you to understand anatomy and physiology, appreciate this course, understand what it is all about. And for you, the nurse who is at home, now that you'll be a certified nurse assistant, bathing your patient, feeding them, transferring them, doing activities of daily living with them, for them, or encouraging them to do it themselves, or you who is a licensed practical nurse doing what the certified nurse does, giving them medications, or registered nurse injections, because you can still give injections at home. Remember, the doctor explains what to do and you do it at home for your loved ones. And then also you, the coordinator, our chief nursing officer at home. Once you understand these different parts, once you have an idea about the fact that the human body has various organ systems, the vital organs that the human being cannot do without, you are able to care for them better. Even if at home you don't have to understand that this is the frontal bone and this is the occipital bone, much as because you've not taken nursing, but there's a nurse in you. Just the mere fact that you understand that the bones of the head are not one huge piece of bone, but that they are parts of the bone, will help you understand how to care for this patient. That when the doctor tells you, or when you tell the doctor the child fell from the third floor of the building, the doctor will ask, how did they fall? Was it with the head or with the legs? And by telling you if they fell with the head, they see the head is swollen. Your mind goes to the fact that there's a brain, the structure of the brain is inside, and that there are bones, and that there's a likelihood that there was an impact between the bones and the brain. So whatever else the doctor explains, you are not lost. You have an idea what he's talking about, because to you, the brain is not in the abdomen. The bladder is in the abdomen, but the brain is inside the head. I hope I've helped you understand. Now, all this information is in Google. There are books, there are various materials to just help you understand. If it fascinates you to understand what is in the body, even watching videos, just to understand that when somebody eats, this is how the food flows. That when this is how urine is formed and is emptied. These are how hormones are released in the body and what they do. The videos are there online. Kindly watch them and become a better nurse, because knowledge is power. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the session for today. Don't forget Nehemiah's story. They were building the walls in portion in order to rebuild the entire circumference wall of the wall of Jerusalem. So our bodies have different parts that work together in order to form a whole human being, stable mentally, emotionally, physically, and even spiritually. As for Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem, the Arab, and the Ashdod nation, just see them as the diseases, the infection, the negative environment that we all live in that threaten our existence, they threaten our well-being. And just like Nehemiah, forge on forward. Forge on forward by taking good care of yourself, physically, exercising, eating nutritious foods, doing health checkups, participating in your own care. And when you do that, the Sanballat and Tobias, the diseases and infections, have no place in stopping you from being healthy, whole, and even sound. Thank you once again. My name is Ludia Osita. I'll see you in our next episode. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.